Hi there, my name is Eric Francis Coppolino. Welcome to another edition of Planet Waves TV. Once again, I am back in time for an eclipse. Been laying back a little bit on the Planet Waves TV schedule, but I think I'm back in the groove. A lot is happening. It's a very, very busy sky. As you know, Mercury is retrograde, and that, of course, is the underlying psychological drone of things right now. Mercury, extraordinarily powerful in Virgo, treading its way backwards. That retrograde process is a little more than halfway done. It ends concurrently with the Sun ingressing the sign Libra, and that is to say the Libra equinox happens right as Mercury stations direct. So we do have a little bit of something to look forward to, and we have an eclipse to look forward to. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon. The eclipse is in approximately 47 hours from the time that I'm recording, so I'm recording with the moon in Aquarius, and just made up a chart for you. Here it is on the super durable chart thingy, and let's take a look at what this chart says. All right, so first of all, just to get orientated, Mercury retrograde in Virgo, going that way. Right? The Sun's going that way toward the end of Virgo. Mercury's going that way. So Mercury retrograde, I think, is the basic layer of experience. It's the thing that's going to most likely kind of dominate the conversation. Only that's being accentuated and enhanced by the fact that there is an eclipse coming. And the way the eclipse looks is the Sun in late Virgo opposite the Moon in late Pisces. At the moment, the Moon is right about here. So the Moon is going to move exactly 30 degrees, and that's in 48 hours. So I guess the Moon's moving pretty quickly as part of its relative speed. Okay, so now, first of all, an eclipse is a full moon, lunar eclipse. And the corresponding, where did the corresponding solar eclipse go? It's hanging too far up on the wall to conveniently get it down. But the last YouTube that I did, Planet Waves TV, the last episode covered the new moon eclipse, a total solar eclipse in Virgo, and now the corresponding eclipse is a penumbral lunar eclipse in Pisces. And what a penumbral eclipse means is that the moon doesn't really dip all the way into the Earth's shadow as it's cast in space. The moon is going to kind of graze the edge of the Earth's shadow. The umbra is the dark, if you remember from 5th grade science class, the umbra is the dark part of the shadow, and the penumbra is kind of the hazy part of the shadow around the outside of the circle. And so with a penumbral eclipse, the moon passes through the penumbra of the Earth's shadow. That's how it gets its name. Sometimes these things do make sense. All right. And so the mere fact of a full moon is enough to keep people up at night and make us feel more and instigate a little bit of anxiety. Add to that the Pisces full moon, which happens once a year, most years, and you have a more sensitive version of the full moon. The moon has no special dignity in the sign Pisces, except it is extraordinarily sensitive in the sign Pisces, and it's not especially easy to handle. It does not necessarily know what it is feeling. The moon does not possess a lot of volition or forward motion momentum of its own. The moon is more of a kind of a background figure in astrology until it has some reason to come into the foreground, which it's doing when there is an eclipse, when it will appear to dim out. And what we have with a Pisces lunar eclipse is an extraordinary degree of sensitivity, and also some information about what we can do to leave the past behind. Words easier said than done. Everyone has things in their life that they regret. Everyone has experiences that they wish hadn't happened, and insults, accusations, and injuries of all various shades flying around the planet, and have been since the very moment that we were born. And what we have with a south node lunar eclipse in Pisces is an opportunity to do some emotional forgetting. We carry around a lot of stuff, and a lot of times that stuff seems to accumulate in Pisces, which the Brits, or at least the Brits of a previous generation of astrologers, were fond of calling Pisces the dustbin of the zodiac. And that can work for the 12th house. Why is Pisces the dustbin, meaning garbage can? I think of it more as the delta of the zodiac. It is, after all, the last sign. It is a water sign, and everything does tend to flow in the direction of Pisces. And that includes all the nutrients, and it includes all the toxins, and includes everything unresolved. And so with an eclipse in Pisces, particularly on the south node, which is about releasing more than it is about acquiring, we get to release some of that past karma there. So that's one little quality of this. But what makes this eclipse extraordinary is that it's going on, first of all, making aspects to other planets. And so let's take a look at how that looks. I've highlighted the grand cross that this eclipse is. Now, most astrologers by now are looking at the fact that this is an eclipse that is conjunct Chiron in late Pisces, and it's going to be the last eclipse conjunct Chiron, as far as I can tell, till Chiron's back in Pisces in 40 more years. And so this eclipse is conjunct Chiron in Pisces. It highlights Chiron in Pisces, and the Chiron connection makes the whole thing that much more sensitive, and makes it that much more human, really, I think, and makes the emotions intense, and makes them real, and I think gives some incentive to do the healing work indicated by the conjunction of Chiron and the moon eclipsing Chiron in Pisces, right? The moon being eclipsed and conjunct Chiron in Pisces. Chiron will always point to a healing method, and the healing method in this case tends to be emotional, and it tends to be about letting go. I'm born under the sun sign Pisces, and I can tell you that changing the way that I feel is almost like changing the water in a lake. It happens only slowly, and the water is flowing in one end of the lake and maybe flowing out the other end of the lake. Maybe there's a few tributaries bringing it in, but it's not easy for me to change the way I feel in a moment, like it does seem to be for some of my peers born under different signs. And so I associate the emotional journey of being a Pisces of kind of a continuous draining and refreshing, kind of letting the water run and letting the water drain at the same time. And so that's one thing that I recommend that you do. And once that process is started, the stagnation that you may have been feeling tends to ease, because once water is flowing, it's no longer stagnant, and it's only a matter of time before all of the water is completely refreshed. And so we're in that time now. So not only is the moon conjunct Chiron in Pisces indicating the necessity for emotional healing, which might also include dealing with pain and addressing the pain of the past in some way, besides getting completely swallowed by that pain. Stick to the edges of it rather than diving all the way in. This eclipse is square Pholus. There's another centaur planet. Chiron was the first centaur, discovered in 1977. Pholus, the second centaur, discovered in 1992. And it is currently in late Sagittarius, making a long square to Chiron. So the moon is square Pholus, Chiron is square Pholus, and the sun is square Pholus. And interestingly, Mars is conjunct Pholus, and therefore this is an eclipse that is square Mars and square Pholus. This is, I think, where we have Mars in this kind of a configuration, particularly being squared by the moon. This is about being conscious of the nature of anger. There's a lot of judgment about anger, and I'm not advocating anger, but I think that we need to admit that anger exists and that we live in a society with a lot of frustrated, pissed off people, and to some extent, everyone possesses some anger. I admit there are going to be some either very high or very naive beings who don't seem to manifest anger, but chances are you're in the 99.9% of people who do get pissed off. And I think it's important to acknowledge that anger exists and understand the nature of anger as best you can, and the way in which anger is a form of energy. And it's also important to remember that a lot of what we're processing and what we're feeling is karmic material that's been passed down to us through the generations by our family lineage and our DNA. And then also there's karma that seems to be cycling and circulating through some method or means other than direct DNA transfer. So there's relationships that we have that may exist from previous lifetimes that are difficult to pin down because these things are not easy to describe. There's no documentation or verification in the objective sense, and we're constantly dealing with speculation. However, I think that it's fair enough to say that a lot of what we're dealing with is coming down from our parents and our grandparents and from their ancestors, and a lot of the rest of what we're dealing with is not necessarily as a result of things caused in this lifetime. That a lot of what we live here and now is a response to the past, and we need to adjust that response. But part of that adjustment means being real about the feelings that we feel and about the desires that we have, another factor of Mars, and about the quest that we're on, which is a factor of Mars in Sagittarius. So we've got Mars conjunct Pholus in Sagittarius, and what's interesting is that they are conjunct the Galactic Core. Both are, it's a pretty good, let's see that on a more detailed, talking about a 3-degree conjunction of Mars to the Galactic Core. It looks like a little more than 2-degree conjunction of Pholus to the Galactic Core, plus they're both leaning on it. Mars is going to cross the Galactic Core the very next thing that it does after this eclipse, and Quat War is going to be, Pholus is going to be working its way up to the Galactic Core, and there's another much more distant point than even Pholus. Pholus takes us out to about Neptune. Quat War goes beyond Pluto. Quat War is about family patterns. And so there's something in this about family patterns. Quat War is a really interesting minor planet. It's the one that, when was it discovered? Sometime in the, right around the turn of the century, turn of the current century, Quat War was discovered. And this is one of the creator gods of some people called the Tungva people, the people who lived in the Los Angeles area prior to Magellan and all those people showing up, prior to Cortez and all the gringos who came and wreaked havoc on Native Americans. And Quat War's creation myth is one of the most awesome creation myths I've ever heard, which is starts with Old Man Sky, who comes out and does a dance, and then he's joined by Grandma Earth, and they've got rattles and shakers, and they're doing a little dance, and then the next entity comes out, some subsequent god who was kind of created by the universe, and then followed by some other god, and then some other, and then eventually much of the tribe is up there dancing and playing its role with its rattles and bells and stuff like that. And so Quat War is the dance of creation, and so it addresses creation mythology, your personal creation mythology, and also the creation mythology that your family subscribed to. At the time you were born, your family gave you some explanation of where you came from. Usually it's a pretty lame explanation, but they did give you some explanation, whether they started with the stork, or mommy and daddy have a special hug, or you come a crow out of mommy's belly, or whatever line they give you. They gave you a story, but more than the story, more than the narrative given by one's parents, I liken Quat War to the dance that everyone was doing and the music that everyone was hearing when you were born. So when you're born, this dance is already happening, right? You don't have any choice in that matter, or if you had it, you exercised it sometime previously, making whatever agreement you made to come here, assuming that's even true. So you show up, and everybody, all these adults around you, are like doing this dance, and they're making this music, and they're jiggling and shaking, and you start to hear the rhythm. And basically the thing that we do is we pick up on the rhythm and we do the dance that all these people around us are doing, because it's the thing to do. Then there are the weirdos who are dancing to the beat of their own drummer, and then some people become drummers, and some stick out their thumb at 14 years old and head for Alaska, and not everyone follows along, but most of us do follow along, and we are always imprinted by the original dance of creation that these people were doing. That is Quaoar. And further, I think the Quaoar has a connection to what becomes your personal, heartfelt, inwardly sensed creation myth of where you come from, whether you determine that you're an elemental, or you're a wanderer, or you're a soul who came from the Pleiades, or you're some other form of extraterrestrial, or maybe you're just a ordinary human who's happy to have evolved from the monkeys, or whatever that might be, right? So whatever your personal creation mythology is, that too can be represented by Quaoar. But the thing that I take it as, besides skipping all the spiritual philosophy, in mundane astrology and practical astrology, is that Quaoar represents the family pattern, and this family pattern includes both the family of origin and your family of choice. And so we have Mars conjunct Pholus, conjunct Quaoar, aligned with the galactic center, and then there's an eclipse conjunct Chiron squaring that. The whole thing gets jiggled up and shaken up all at once. My sense is that there's a lot of letting go that can happen, and that you can benefit by identifying what deadlocks you're in, and then just offering it up, asking for help, offering whatever it is that you have that you're dealing with. And of course, some of it's going to be bigger than you. It's going to be too big for you to handle. It's going to seem like it's going to take too many years to get through it. In therapy, though I do believe in therapy, but I also believe in asking for help. And the way you ask for help is you ask for help you ask inwardly. You're not praying to something outside of yourself. You are making contact with something inside of you that is in contact with the great spirit that coordinates all intelligence and all this whole dance of life. And you're tapping into that, and you're making yourself available to the information and the wisdom and the overall kind of cosmic intel. And the cosmic piece is indicated by the fact that there's this huge thing back in that direction by approximately 25,000 light years. And by the way, there's some new story today in the news on Wednesday about the charting of several thousand stars in the Milky Way. Something apparently has not been done. There's been a new survey of stars in the Milky Way. Of course, several thousand is not that many. There's somewhere ahead of 300 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. A small galaxy, by the way, but nonetheless, it is our galaxy, and all of this is here. So if we think of all this as kind of like happening on one level of experience, and then beyond all of that, beyond like kind of like this whole cross pattern, we're going to get to chaos down here in a second, but beyond all of this, tapping into it in the deep background, in the deep environment, the thing that is behind all of this stuff going on, the Chiron Pholus square and the Chiron Mars square and the eclipse and the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is the galactic center. It's all lining up with the galactic center. And the galactic center is asking you to tune in and follow your personal, inner, spiritual homing device. What is your calling leading you to? Now, the thing with the galactic center is it's easy to deny the feeling of the galactic center, just as it's easy to deny the feel any spiritual calling. It's easier to say, well, I feel called to be a bass player because that's what I feel like I need to do, but everyone's telling me I better be an accountant. Usually being an accountant wins, and it's a little bit like that with the galactic center. You can feel the calling and then forget that you heard it. You can hear it, you can know something and then forget it. And one of the key concepts of the galactic center is discovering your highest truth and then forgetting it. And I discovered that this was possible, and then I have some dim recollection of Philip Sedgwick at some NORWAC conference 15 years ago or something, saying, "Oh, and you tend to forget what the galactic center is about." And maybe I'm making that up and just projecting it onto my friend Phil. Hi, Phil Sedgwick. All right, so he's a specialist in deep space points and centaurs, and writes a really funny newsletter called Skyscraping. Recommended, easy to Google. All right, so GC, behind the whole thing, big spiritual force, big spiritual presence behind the whole thing, and the contact from all these other planets, particularly Mars and Chiron and Pholus and the Sun and the Moon, are saying that this spiritual presence is available and accessible. Try it, get it, tap in, ask for help, and inspire yourself by acting on your ideas. We're still in eclipse territory. And in the last video, I mentioned that the way to vote during an eclipse is not with your intentions, but with your actions, right? There's a lot of intention setting that we see going on. I'm going to set my intentions, and it's very sweet and very spiritual. And I'm suggesting that setting intentions is important, then you put your boots on and you do something about it. Basically, you can't just intend to play an instrument or make a painting or write a book or get a new job. You eventually have to actually take action on it. And now I do recognize that there is this often like a mystical level of reality. That I was looking up at the angels up there. A mystical level of reality where you set an intention and the thing happens, and where there's a counsel to kind of get out of your own way and all that. Yeah, I agree. I've had that happen, and I also think that we're in the world, and part of what we're doing in the world is we're here to learn how to do things and to learn how to use the resources and the tools that we have and to make things happen. All right, super quick go over a few other reminders of what's happening in this chart. Then I'm going to tell you about the class I'm teaching on October 8th called It's All in the Houses. Okay, currently in the sky, we're in an exact square of little old Neptune. He's really quite large. Square Saturn. I didn't draw a line in. I don't want to confuse the chart. This aspect is quite exact right now. In addition, the Uranus-Eris conjunction is quite exact right now for the second time. And by the way, Saturn-Neptune is also happening for the second time. Of when there's a multiple aspect planetary contact, for example, when a conjunction happens 3 times, or when the Uranus-Pluto square happened 7 times. Remember that between 2012 and 2015, there were 7 exact contacts. The middle one is the real one. The middle one is the one that's exact from a heliocentric perspective. They all count, but the one in the middle is the one that is exact for the one and only time in the heliocentric chart. And that's true of Saturn square Neptune, which is the aspect of feet of clay that we're experiencing right now, to quote a beautiful image from the Bible, and the Uranus-Eris conjunction in Aries, the great sigil of our time in history, the digital revolution indicator, the electronic media come home to roost, we don't know who the fuck we are because we spend so much time on the internet getting our soul sucked out, not sucked back in, of our bodies and of our minds, that we're in this kind of fantasy world of almost a completely vapid self-concept. And part of what we're doing is gaining back that sense of self. And one of my theories is here that this is going on in Aries here, and it's very self-driven and self-centered, even though self is not centered. It's kind of self-centered on a self that's not all that centered. However, Jupiter is in Libra, and Venus is in Libra. Venus is going to come and go, but Jupiter's going to stick around for a year, 13 months, just entered on the 9th, before it moves on to Scorpio. So we've got 13 glorious months of Jupiter in Libra, and this is saying something about embodying, using relationships as a way of embodying self. Now we do this, we often do this. This is a time-honored way of finding oneself, is to engage in relationships, whether you're doing it through creativity or through conflict or through sharing or through sex or some combination of more than one of those factors, right? But this puts some substance into a relational idea in this zodiac thingy, whatever it is. And my hunch about Jupiter in Libra is that it's going to grant us, if we choose to accept it, some relief from this rapidly vanishing concept of a self and an inner being that's being wiped out by digital consciousness, really, and we have a chance to experience some of that and recover some of that and get back in the flow of being a self through relating to other people in a direct and hopefully in-person way. Take the chance. Take the risk. Ask the person out face to face. Don't just email them or call them or text them. Take the chance of saying something directly to someone that you are interested in or that you care about or to whom you have something to say. I realize it's super duper old fashioned, but everything old is new again. So I mentioned that I'm teaching a class that's at noon on Eastern Time on 10/8. The class is called "It's All in the Houses." That is a quote with an interesting lineage, because it was spoken by a guy named Patrick Walker, who was my personal point of contact into astrology. I would not have any interest in astrology. Maybe I would have found some, but I found my interest in astrology, let's say, the way that it actually happened, through a writer named Patrick Walker, who was writing, among other places, in the New York Post. He wrote the horoscope in the New York Post till he died in 1995, an astonishing 21 years ago. And he told Jonathan Kaner, he said to Jonathan, it's all in the houses. Meaning, if you want to understand astrology, if you understand the houses, you're most of the way there. And I have found that to be a very practical way to proceed. I love planets, but the planets lack contact if you don't understand the houses. And the beautiful thing about the houses is that they don't require a previous understanding of astrology. They are basically as close to pure philosophy of life as you can get in astrology, right? There's no mathematics to it. There's just understanding a set of ideas and how the ideas mix and match and blend and connect to one another. So we're going to look at some example houses. I'll probably use the 12th house, the 5th house, the 8th house. Those are three good houses to use. And we only need a few houses. And my theory of the houses is that you understand a house when you understand the physical place the house is, right? So all the 12 houses each represent a kind of a physical space. Like the 6th house represents healing spaces. The 10th house represents governmental spaces. The 12th house represents dream spaces or very, very, very large places. So the first thing to understand a house is you understand the physical location on the earth where that house is placed, and there may be several. The 12th could be a movie theater, for example. All right. Then you understand the confluence of themes of that house. So, for example, the 5th house is children and pleasure and play and gambling and sports and speculation. What do all those things have in common? Okay, so once you start to see them not as individual things swept into a dustbin of the zodiac, but rather as themes that are neatly or elegantly, perhaps elegantly interwoven and make a kind of a meta theme, right? All those, for example, 5th house topics emerge with a meta theme. There's a thing that groups them all together, a bigger idea that groups them all together. Okay, so that's the second thing, right? Physical place, the thing that groups the confluence of themes, the meta theme, and then the third is you understand the relationships in that house. So, for example, the 12th house can be your relationship to dead people. The 8th house can be your relationship to in-laws, the very important factor of the 8th house, sort of the people whose family that you marry into. The 7th house, open friends and open enemies. 3rd house, siblings and neighbors. So if you look at the house in those three ways, you can pretty much figure out the house, and you'll be amazed how fast you suddenly understand the thing, and instead of becoming a lifeless stick of plastic and metal and fur, it's suddenly a useful tool. And this is the goal of learning astrology, is to get things from being these foggy, difficult to grasp, wispy concepts, and suddenly you have a tool that's accessible and useful in your toolbox. And that's what all of my classes do. And by the way, there are many classes available. Write to me. A couple of reasons to write to me. One, for previous classes, or if you want the Planet Waves TV discount to the It's All in the Houses, EFC@ericfrancis.com. Do I need to write that down on something? Here, let me take 10 seconds of your time. Write it. You're seeing my computer graphics department at work. There. EFC@ericfrancis.com. I did this in Adobe Illustrator, by the way. All right. That all said, a pleasure. Happy eclipsing. Always look forward to hearing from you. I do a more in-depth treatment of this eclipse on Planet Waves FM. That was published last night. I also look at the health situation of Hillary Clinton, and I look at the chart of the Standing Rock Sioux Indian Reservation Treaty that is now under some very interesting aspects. It's all about the Standing Rock standoff in North Dakota, where hundreds of Indian tribes have gathered, and activists from all over the country, including Amy Jacobs from Planet Waves, are gathering. And we will have more coverage of that, but I do read the chart in Tuesday's Planet Waves FM. Thanks for being here. Pleasure and fun. As always, I'm now going to output this thing and get it up onto the 12th house internet. All right, lots of love, and bye for now.